back at you, man. Chat, Max and I have been fans of each other's work since the first space yacht days. You could pull up a
Right.
lot of other LA parties, and we were all kind of in the mix about 10, 12 years ago there. And you
Yes,
know,
we were.
so
Yes, we were. You know what's crazy is that
yeah.
2015 was 10 years ago. Call me
Yeah,
old, but like it just still doesn't quite feel like that.
it doesn't feel there are times where, it doesn't feel like a decade. It feels like a long time ago, and it feels like a lot has happened, but
Yeah,
it
absolutely. A
doesn't.
lot has happened.
Yeah, what's
An
up,
insane
chat?
amount.
Yeah, we got Command Escape. What's up, dudes? I hope you're well. They're saying back at Supper Club. Wow, that's a deep cut. Yeah, the
Supper Club
Golden
is a
Box
deep club.
era.
Oi, oi,
Yeah,
oi.
Stefan Clay, how we doing? Polecat, Honu. It's good to see it. Yeah, R.I.P. to Icon, of course, and I
RIP
know
to
everyone's
Icon.
in mourning here, of course.
Absolutely.
Max leading the charge there for a long time. Two below, good to see you. Thicky, of course, the homie intro, aka Thicky, and oh man, Hugo, yeah, we'll get it going, and
We'll
I'll
get it
talk to
going.
you guys in the
Yeah.
chat.
Chat's
Yeah,
going
man.
ham. Chat's going ham. Okay. So I just wanted to talk to you about your journey, your artist development, what you've been through, all the sort of valuable pieces and gems that you've gathered along the way, as well as some music production stuff as well, because this is for music producers. So, and fans as well. So yeah, I've got some questions for you. We're going to answer questions
Cool.
from the Futureproof members as well.
Awesome.
Because we gave them the insider access to you. So I'm going to kind of be bouncing around from then, and we're just going to chat it up, and then we'll get
Sounds
into some music
fantastic.
stuff.
Hit me, dude.
So the Dr. Fresh project is this awesome blend of hip hop and, before G House was G House, it was bass house, and there's trap influences, and there's all different sorts of house music influences in addition to rap and all of these things. I guess my opening question is for you is, how did that brand identity come together for you? Like, was that like an intentionally built thing, or was it something that took place over a span of years? Like how did that come together for you?
Great question, and you also highlighted some really important parts of the answer there. You mentioned West Coast hip hop, and that's really the undercurrent to everything I do. Yeah, it came to fruition over time. I think the most important part of my journey was recognizing that, especially I made a really diverse like array of music in the last 15 years, but in those experimenting phases, those first few years, like 2012 to 2015, uh and really before Gangsta Gangsta, my NWA cover came out, I didn't really have this kind of identity internally. I was making really cool shit that I loved. You use the word G house. That is that subgenres evolved so much
Yeah.
over the years. I like to say that we were at peak G house version 4 when Mala, myself, and Bijou and Chami
Yeah.
and everyone was kind of mid to late 2010s sampling all that. But
Yeah.
for me, the actual answer is, I loved bass house, I loved deep house and G house, and I also love trap. And so I wanted to really combine all that with West Coast hip hop. And through a few years of sound design and discovering what I like to do and make, it all kind of culminated in that moment for me with Gangsta Gangsta, and then follow up records like Feedback or Armageddon. It's not that I don't consider the rest of my catalog me, but um, I've always tried to convey the mid tempo side of West Coast hip hop through electronic music in a way that's not that's more hip hop based than bass music based, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We've always had like glitch hop and halftime bass and halftime drum and bass, right? But like I always tried to like let the you know kind of bump and G funk element of that get tied in with the bass house. So
It
that's
seems
really
like
what it
such a
is,
natural
right?
pairing, right? Like
Right?
even just at tempos. It's
Yeah,
like it just
yeah.
is there. It was almost like it was presented to us and said, "Someone please do this very well."
Yeah. Well,
And I
I
think you did an excellent job, and you have continued to
thanks,
do
man.
so. I was listening to a glimpse of some of the new stuff that you're working on that you're going to show, and it's just tight. Like how much of the hip hop thing, like what did you grow up listening to?
Being a California kid, growing up in the Bay Area, Marin and San Francisco, I was right in the middle of the hyphy era. I'm
Yeah.
34. So for me, Tell Me When to Go came out my freshman year of high school. Mac Dre died in eighth grade for me, and that was like something that we were mourning.
Yeah.
Andre Nicotina, who I ended up working with, was like the most burned CD at my middle school, was, a lot of Horns and Halos and all that kind of mid 2000s Bay Area music was what it was everything I loved. But I also was on the we both collaborated with Tom Morello, that
Yes.
that kind of side
A
of
legendary segue.
yeah, Rock the Bells, kind of politically charged punk music from the 2000s and new metal from the 2000s and 90s was part of what we grew up with too.
Yeah.
So for me, I took the favorite things I loved, and then I started falling in love with electronic music. And it was growing up with that hip hop though that you were talking about, like before Dr. Fresh. Yes, it's hyphy music, and then me falling in love with wanting to be a producer. So how the fuck do I combine my love for this stuff with these weird kind of sounds that I'm hearing out of Steve Aoki, Diplo, and all their labels, and everyone under Dim Mak and Fool's Gold and Mad Decent and all that shit.
Yeah. Um, at any point in time when you were, just to get down to some real artist stuff, do you ever feel like you were like just copying other people, like along the way,
Totally.
along the
Yeah.
quest, right? So
Yeah.
like one of the great quests of an artist, and something that every artist deals with, and it's a question that I get asked all the time because it's the ultimate goal of everyone, is to find your own sound, right? And I think that some artists, new artists, and even experienced artists can get caught up in the concept of being so original that they miss the line somewhere. And I'm curious to hear your point of view on that. Like, were you ever sounding like your favorite artists on the way to becoming your own sound? And like, and how do you
Yes.
feel about that?
100%. I'm not afraid to say it. But I also, when you're first starting to produce, you're using reference tracks to what you love, and you obviously,
Yeah.
don't have an identity, and oftentimes you don't have the confidence yet, and that it's like, I'm not a great chef, but like, I mostly use pasta sauces that I buy in the store, jarred up, but like, I add in my own spices, like, I'm an amateur, right? But I've got a really great buddies up here, a Canadian chef who is just making stocks and sauces like it's nobody's business. I don't have the confidence yet to give you my like spicy arrabbiata, and so
Right.
like or my spin on it. So if you listen to my early shit, like my first big SoundCloud hit was like my Cassie remix that blew up on Vine in 2013. And that like the second half of that, I'm like definitely copying the DJ Snake ba 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 ba,
Yeah.
like the vocal chop thing. Like
Yeah. From the
every
Bieber joint, right? Yeah.
yeah, or whatever the yeah, yes, exactly. Uh,
They're also similar, but yes,
yes,
I know exactly what you're talking
they
about.
are, yeah. But yeah, I'm like throwing that in there, and I was like, that works, so we're gonna do that, and I'm taking you try to take bits and pieces of a lot of people and not copy one person in particular. I know you like it. Thank you. That's the song. Yeah, and so I,
Right.
that huge fan of that song, and so I was combining that with like synths that I was hearing from uh, even like Kate Renata back
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and so I was like trying to come up with something new there, but you don't really break out of that, or at least I didn't really break out of that until I found the confidence of going to make you go through like four different like phases and end up making something original by like reverse engineering something, and you're like, oh, this has never been done before. And for me that was Gangsta Gangsta. I had like slowed down a bass house record that was a remix of Far East Movement, and that I did like the year previously, but I used sound design that was pretty unique because I combined some, like 4 or 5 different synths and made something weird and just heavy and yeah. And then when I slowed it down to the tempo that NWA was at, you're talking about like the natural tempo,
Yeah.
right? G funk
Right.
in. That's how I got there. And then, it was that song, and I got a real reaction from my
Yeah.
friends and the
Eureka.
people. Yeah. And even before it came out, it was like fucking Dylan Manning and Ryan McCaleb, on the A&R for that with Bijou and Baby Eazy-E, and they're like, "You made something different, man. This is going to be really good. I just have
Mm.
a feeling about it." So but the thing is, I even after that still wanted to make other shit, and so like I started House Call Records and like Take a Step Back. It's been a huge record for me, and
Yeah.
that was such a huge driven force by Martin Horger and my love for what he was doing, and I was collaborating with Bijou, making all these G House style bass house hybrid records at 126, 128. So like, no, I wasn't exclusive to the mid tempo thing from there either. And
Yeah.
so I'd say the wrap up the long winded answer here, yeah, I'm if I hear something I love, man, I'm gonna go to the studio and try to fuck with that sound.
Absolutely. I think
Still,
a lot of people don't realize that style, this is my semi hot take.
okay,
Someone's style is just a collection of the things that you like,
yeah,
which by nature would mean that there is no style that is truly original.
mm,
But until it becomes such a melting pot of this eclectic sum of things that you've consumed over the years, right? That's why I always encourage everyone to consume as many different types of media and styles and fashion and anime and movies and like radio or whatever, old movies. Like I love movies, right? So like a lot of
yeah.
my inspiration comes from what I watch on the big screen, not the big little screen bad, big screen good. But so
Seen
like
that shit.
that's it's like,
Yeah,
we're the same age, it's fine. So like
yeah.
so yeah, it's like originality is the goal, right? That's how
Mhm.
you stand out. You stand out from doing your own thing. But remember that your originality, you have to end up expressing all of the things that you like in your own way. I think that is how you can be original. And
Mhm.
that's a little mystical and hard to just say, oh, this is how you do that. But it's about the awareness of just like, I'm just going to just consume all these cool different things. And then I'm going to go in the studio as soon as I think of something cool and just music vomit. And maybe that's how you get there. It is mystical though. It's like, how do
It
you
is.
find your sound? But you found your sound through taking what you enjoyed as a young child and a
Mhm.
teenager,
Mhm.
and then your new exposure to electronic music, and you just mushed them all together. And guess what?
Yeah.
You got something original, right?
Yes, and you can't exactly replicate that too, is the other thing. Like, you can use the same patch over and over, but that's not going to guarantee that the next record is going to be like, well, I find that, sometimes it's really specific. Like, other times you've got to keep turning the wheel a little bit more.
Yeah. Which leads me to my next question, which is if you were a new artist, you were advising a new artist, or if you were an artist yourself, would you recommend going the route of opening the door out the gates and saying, I do whatever I want? This is everything I do. My first EP has 4 different genres on it, right?
Mhm.
That's one approach. Or it's like, this is what I do. I make neuro drum and bass, and that's it. And then that's how I'm going to avoid alienating people. I think there's a take for each side. I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, I think you can if you're gonna do the first take, you to use like a really big example, Knock 2 did that, but
Right.
ultimately, even with that example, he started with pretty much when he focused on bass house after having done the trap and all the other stuff with the same sound design,
Right.
emphasis on that.
Exactly.
Uh, that's the common denominator across genres. You gotta have a sound because I think when you're thinking about listeners who are just becoming adults right now, who maybe heard Knock 2 and ISOXO in high school, a lot of those people weren't, of our generation, Max, where they were like, oh, this wouldn't be played at a night bass night. but it might still be played at, a Dr. Fresh show. They're not drawing that distinction. So it's
Yeah.
got to like register, in a way that they think about it fitting into the context of that artist's story. So like, you know, if you're gonna switch up the sound design, it's gotta have a similar vibe. You switch up the genre, it's gonna have a really similar vibe. And I find that
What's the common
yeah,
thread?
yeah.
Yeah.
The more specificity there is, um, you know, yeah, like Less Lethal in the chat's like, I'll be making drum and bass sometimes. And like, yeah, but Less Lethal's got like a pretty, when we talk about FM bass and UK bass and American bass house mixed together, they're doing, a pretty specific sound design approach. So like that would
And
basically work for them because you're just making their style a different tempo.
yeah, sine waves
Yeah.
are speak every language, So
Yeah. Yeah,
um
bro.
yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the most unreplicatable and unique thing you can do is be authentic.
Mm.
And I think
You've
at the
gotta
end of
be.
the day, you can't replicate someone's authenticity
Mm.
because everyone is different, right? So just
Yeah.
be yourself. It sounds
Yes.
so corny, but like it's so real.
Yes, and it's so hard to tell someone have the confidence of,
Yeah.
that your style is gonna win. It's like, but if there is a kernel of truth in that saying of like it's 99% execution, or it's 99. I forget. I'm fucking up the quote here. Um, a great idea is nothing without the execution, right? That's what I'm
Right.
trying to say.
Yeah.
So like, everyone in the chat, everyone in your school, has probably come up with like an idea that could be a full-time touring career. But there's so many steps that you've got to develop that and build a community around it. That's the other thing too. I'll say like, going to your artist, the other thing that I like to tell people is like, there's a language that you've got to learn to speak for that sound that you create. So
Mm.
once you've identified that, and what kind of person you are behind the mic or the turntables, vocalist, fucking, DJ producer, whatever, rapper, a DJ, whatever you are, you got to learn to speak the language of your core audience whilst still being yourself.
Mm.
It's something that I tell my friends in their 30s and 40s who are like doing their second or third project, and I'm like, dude, you gotta like, what's your core demo, man? Is it people in their 30s? Because then you're doing a good job. But if not, you've got to like figure out how to speak it without seeming like the dad who's hanging out at you know what I mean? So like,
It's
but
so real.
there are some really cool fucking dudes in their 40s who, I mean, even Claude Von Stroke, man, starting Barclay Crenshaw,
I mean,
he's,
yeah, he can do
you know,
anything.
he could figure, yeah, he can do anything. But like, there's people who like look at Fish 56 Octagon. You know that guy?
Yeah.
The like the bald dude from the UK who like he figured out how to speak to his audience and what style of 90s tunes works for now. And now
Yeah.
he's playing like 50 music festivals a year.
Yeah.
And so like
You have to
social
figure
media.
out who your audience is first, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. But then you still be yourself, man. You could market anything, but you can't like, you can't use the knock two marketing or, audience strategy with something like Fish 56 Octagon. You've got to figure out what it is. And so that, for me, it was like when I first started making deep house, like in 2011 and 12, and I was making like Jamie Jones style music before I went back to EDM in my production journey. I like I found myself being too stoic on stage and I didn't have
Mm.
any confidence in expressing myself when I had played like 300 fraternity parties in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And I'm like, wait a minute, I know how to be a fucking like not like a raver, but like a raving, house party
A fun
lunatic.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fun guy. That's the language I speak.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Right. Got to
you know,
re-tap into it. How,
yeah.
what did you do and how would you recommend, you had spoke on this earlier about community, right? And I always talk about how important it is to build a place where people feel welcome and building something that people want to feel like they're a part of, right? Like
Totally.
that's so huge. What were some things that you did that kind of developed this fun party West Coast vibe thing that everyone, they're feeling like they're missing out when they don't see your set,
You talk about community. First thing I'll say is, uh, starting record labels and building events around those record labels, and finding people to sign to those record labels and hang out with in the chat on Discord. And hello, some of the friendly faces here. Like to build a community just for the sake of developing your friends' careers, and then
Mm,
building a tree of people under your friends that this guy knows this guy, and taking that homegrown approach is really crucial.
mm,
Because when we get back to, you talked about the party fun guy thing and highlighting that and finding your people, ultimately if you're taking a personal approach to it and you're working hands on to start a label, and you're going to gravitate towards people that uh, you get along with,
yeah.
and I shared a lot of stupid jokes with people. What's up, brony? People a couple people popping up in the chat right now. It's like, and so there is like a natural layer of, I'm acquainted with a lot of these people. Some of these people end up becoming friends with, and we end up working together, on the record label, or at least, one of my Discord mods is in here, Thicky, that kind of thing. You're talking about, he's like, that's it, I'm quitting mid-tempo, just gonna make house. Yeah, bro. Wait, hit the last 3 years, your tracks are finally hitting, man. You switch it up, man. Bring G House back. But yeah, I so there's that layer of it too.
Yeah.
But you got to tell the story on stage at the same time. If
Mm,
you're doing this while you're a bedroom producer and you haven't launched a career, then my answer is really specific in the micro. Start with people that you get along with. Start with people whose music is adjacent to yours, even if it's not exact. If you're making trap and this guy's making bass house, but you play each other's records out, that works.
mm,
Start getting together and making something happen before you have managers being like, yo, you need to focus on developing your own shit. And then you get all business with it before you're scaling. If you're already at this level where you have a manager, say you've still got your job that you're just crushing at 40 hours a week, but you're playing like fucking Beyond Wonderland, silent discos, and you're won the Discovery Project and you're trying to scale, then the next important thing is to try to develop that community of people in that sphere too, and recognize that you have to wear the hat of being an entertainer now, but you still got the homegrown thing going on. So there's elements of scale. And the most important thing though is like, I I think you've got to still have this, personality that be personable, and find people that you physically want to talk to and hang out with. I haven't done too much in my Discord this year, but every month I try to get in there and talk some shit for at least 30 minutes now,
yeah.
even if I'm not doing streams. Remind that these beautiful people in the chat and your followers who I'm meeting today too, that you've got to do it for the love of the game, man. I used to sit outside clubs sober with no drugs in my system because I had to drive home having these conversations. I love this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
About that
that's it.
life for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so real. I think that I think the question that is often asked is how do you, and I think it was asked in the chat as well, is how do you find your people? And the truth is, I think that the way that I learned, and this is a way that I really enjoy explaining branding as, is that the people who are going to consume your music ideally are the people that you would want to invite to your own party. They're the people that you want to show up in your green rooms for meet and greets, right? Like, and now all you need to understand, once you know who those people are, ideally those people are like you, and then you need to understand what they want to eat at your cookout, right? Like you're just having a party, right? You have a bunch of vegetarians coming over. You probably wouldn't make gumbo. It's like, it's just knowing who's going to support you and
Yeah.
understanding what they want. As much as being an artist is self-serving, it really isn't. It's community
Mhm.
serving,
Yes.
which by proxy serves yourself because you feel good about it and you get to live your dream. But artists and the people you see on stage that you look up to, they are there for you and they only exist because of you.
Mhm.
So that's something to keep in mind.
For real, dude. Yeah, it's like there are who are those people that are pulling up? You gotta, if you're not catering to them, then you've lost the vision. And
Absolutely. Literally
so
catering the
yeah,
cookout. Like, what do they want?
catering the cookout. Yeah, what are
Yeah.
you eating,
What
bro?
are you
What are we
eating?
serving?
Exactly. You're
Yeah,
serving
yeah,
up the Dr. Fresh gumbo.
yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you about was house call.
Mm,
And like, as someone who started their own label and it totally fizzled out because I just could not mentally contain myself to do what's needed to be done.
mhm.
And you had mentioned that that was such a huge part of you building your community, which I think is so cool because you were able to
Yeah.
use your platform to put people on. How did House Call start, and what's going on now, and what are you doing with that?
Great question, Max. Yeah, so House Call is my current record label and my third record label that I've started
Wow,
in 15 years.
third. Okay.
And third, and also, uh, you know, we're in an interesting, I'd say, phase two or three, depending on how you look at it, of the label.
Mhm.
Uh, I originally started House Call in 2020, um, actually as a forced rebrand because I had a label called The Prescription and I got sued by certain somebody in Hollywood. And so I was forced to rebrand, but I already had a distro deal with Insomniac at the time via Create. And I was about a year into that label. And we just got hit right before COVID. And House Call became a bigger and better version of that. So to backtrack a little bit, I started a label in college called Prep School Recordings because I met some other DJs when I went to boarding school mostly for music. And so, I'd met some other people that were in that world.
Like boarding high
And
school, boarding
yeah,
college.
and
Okay, yeah.
high school, and so I met some other people in LA and then like in that world who had come from that world, and but we're now like I was working for Roger Sanchez and Steve Aoki and these kind of people in the early 2010s. So uh, in college, we dropped Millennium's first EP. We dropped back when it was Millennium Falcon. Um, that is not in distro anymore.
I wonder why.
Yeah. No, but we have the first one without the Falcon. We have a
Yeah.
fucking um we dropped Loud Luxury's first vocal track. We
Mm.
did Sunburn's first records, Lewis the Child's first EP. Those are our
Wow.
big
I
artists.
didn't realize
Yes.
that.
Yes, and so I started that with my manager, and then we brought on Luce the Child's manager after signing the EP, and he worked on the label too. And then we retired that in 2016 after basically Luce the Child just started going bananas on the touring side.
Yeah.
And Joey's like, I don't have time for this label anymore. We're not. We're signing these records to fucking Atlantic,
Right.
and
Understandable.
me and my manager were dealing with my manager was doing Sunburn at the time, and he was like day to day for Oliver Heldens and a bunch of other DJs, and so like we are like fuck, it doesn't really align with our identity anymore. And I had started the Prescription Mix series, and so I incubated the next phase for a couple years, um, and then after running the Prescription Mix series for like 4 years, I was like, we need to do a label with it. That label gained a little bit too much attention because I started doing a bunch of like prescription events, and then said person in Hollywood who has doesn't even have the trademark, but said, "Hey, we were here first." So respectfully on the stream right now, I'll say I just said, you know what? I'm not going to make it a legal fight. You're a
Sure.
much bigger entity than me. Thanks for just like letting me close up shop. I guess. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm out. So we took
Here you are
six
now.
months. Yeah, and then so with House Call, I was like, with the Prescription, I was like, I wanted to make it really sonically specific,
Mm.
you know, and even down to the point of having a mastering engineer just do,
The mix series or the label for prescription?
the label, the
Okay.
label.
Okay. Okay.
So the mix series was kind of bouncing around.
Right. Right. I'm at. Okay.
I did a lot of bass house primarily, but like 30% of the mix series was also like trap, future bass, tech house, etc. And so, when we started the label, it was really specific. But when with part two with House Call, I was like, all right, I want to get a little less specific and make it more about just starting a really successful bass house operation. It's not going to be. I love night bass and I love Dirty Bird, and I'm super inspired by how specific it is. But I'm going to open up it a little bit and focus on just artists that really have a fucking unique sound. So that people like Michael Sparks still really speak to me in that regard. And, you know, um, Zero, Martin Horger, Neon Steve. These are the guys that,
Neon Steve.
yeah. And,
Oh,
oh,
Vancouver,
yeah.
I think. That's a
Victoria,
Canadian legend. Oh,
Victoria.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew Neon Steve from
Oh, yeah, bro. If
before.
you,
I'm
because,
trying not to date myself here, but
because you
holy
were probably
shit.
playing Chambla with him
Yeah,
more than a few years ago.
yeah, what a goat. I hope
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
doing
yeah.
great. Anyways,
Yeah,
sorry,
he's
let me
got a couple
interrupt.
kids. He's doing well. Yeah.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, man. So with house call, I was like, it's still going to be like, uh, a bass house thing. We'll do little trap, mid tempo, tech house. Freak on was one of our tech house guys that was really pushing, and that grew, and a huge function of that was Twitch and Discord and all the other things I was doing while I was off tour. So by the time we came back, all these house call branded events that were prescription branded events previously that I was throwing, were much larger than 500 people. And now, we went on tour with Abstract, or me and Abstract threw a tour, house called Distorted Reality, and we're pulling. There's a few thousand people, almost 4,000 people here in the room now. It's like a
Huge.
bigger
That's
boy
crazy.
shit.
Yeah, big boy
And
shit. That's
but it
insane.
all, you look back, I look back fondly on like the picture of all the Discord members at the Palladium for my first ever Palladium, sellout show after COVID. Amazing. It was a testament to how this really fringe genre kind of developed. And to me, you know, it's the six, like all these little successes of people, that have now gone on to, there's a handful of guys that had nothing going on. Like look at AK Rennie, uh, she was just brand new to the scene, and then now is gone every weekend,
Yeah,
and that's exactly what I wanted to see out of the chat. And so yeah, where house call is now, I'm happy to actually say I signed a new distribution deal. I'm back with Create, just Create by itself, but I
cool.
signed. This is the first time I'm talking about this publicly, but everything's done. So beginning of May, I signed this deal to come back and uh, full on with house call. And so it took a little pause and kind of tried to Orlando Medina, who runs the label with me, and I still meet every week and have met every week that we haven't done a live stream or anything. And very much focusing on still making that bigger than ever, and something that we frequently release and develop artists on. But I've decided, as also I've become a little bit more driven with the hip hop side of things, and like this Shoreline Mafia remix that I'll talk about in a little bit. I'm gonna be doing an additional label project that is gonna be much less volume of output, maybe only 3, 4, 5 records this year, maybe just three. And in addition to house call, I'm gonna like also focus on trying to pair, you know, rappers with bass and bass house artists,
Cool.
but really bass artists to make what I think is this style of Dr. Fresh, G Funk mid tempo, because I hear a little bit of it even at a dubstep tempo, like Trippy Land by Tape B and
Yeah.
Immersive. Like that record, I feel like, talk about a little Nashville or Tennessee
A
game
little
right there,
10 for the
you
10,
know?
man. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to, I know to say that I'm starting a hip hop and bass music label, like people are like, yeah, that's been done for 40 years or 35 years, man. No, I want to try to like,
2008 was 30 years ago at this point, I think, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, man. So yeah, I'm long story short,
Yeah.
with where House Call is now, about 6 months ago, we tapered off from the releases as we moved into this new distribution partners agreement, and it took several months with lawyers. We also, just kind of like migrating the catalog and discussing, do we want to branch house call off into two different things? And the short answer at the end of the day is, and I've trailed off a little bit from your question, but this is an important time to answer all this. I play slightly more bass music now. People are like, oh, it's a new Tony, it's
I
a
see
new
the
Fred.
calcium.
Yeah, like I definitely am highlighting people outside of the house, because here's what it comes down to. I still play bass house. I still play the mid tempo West Coast thing. I've been playing a few drum and bass sets in my tracks, or my sets for like 3 years now. So that's not that new. probably play 3 to 5 more trap and dubstep songs than I did 3 years ago. And I didn't really do that 3 years ago. But 10 years ago, when I was on tour with Borgore and fucking LS Dream, who was at that time
Brills.
Brills,
Yeah.
I was doing that. And so to me, I'm bass house is still so crucial. I got a fucking bass house record with Liquid Stranger that has a trap drop. That's still extremely focused in the same lane as my Abstract collab, my Martin Horger collab. That needs to be like a house call thing. And house
Mm,
call is a label that we need to develop because I'm going to continue to champion bass house and be one of the dudes who still makes it. But I'm
got
sorry,
to.
man. I make a couple different things. So I'm like really fucking sorry. I'm a bad poster child for just I
No,
got
you're
it.
a
So
poster child for just doing you, man.
thanks, dude. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So basically, I'll say, developing the community was crucial at every stage, and I'm about to kind of start to do it again. And that's part of the reason we're talking today. I'm glad. Thanks for the invitation, but it's time to start hanging out with the people. I know what I want to make, and I know what I want to drop. So it's time to get going again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Okay, some quick fire questions
yeah, bring them on.
from the Nexus members. I'm just gonna grab these. This is production related. Okay, we'll just start. We'll just talk a little bit about music production here, and then we'll get into the DAW.
All good. Yeah,
So
we don't need to be in the DAW for 40 minutes either.
no, we
You know,
don't. We don't. We
yeah,
don't.
we got
We're
we
not
got a
last
cool
20 here.
22. Yeah.
22 piece. Okay, cool. So here's one. What does a sound
Yeah.
design session look like for you, and what inspires you the most from
Thank
the sound
God
design?
for the Mac M2 chip, baby, because I got like 40 to 50 cents, and I just duplicated.
You dipped
when I
out the
find-
PC chain
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
M2 gang now.
yeah, I am. So yeah, for me,
I'm
sound
still
design
hanging
session.
on.
Oh, hey, I still got the Alienware here, bro. But no, I legitimately had not to name drop, but Scott Land fucking called me one day. He's like, I heard you're trying to buy a new PC. Just buy a fucking Mac, bro. They're so good.
I
You're
know
just
they
gonna
are now,
waste
though.
all
They
your
are. They
fucking
really
money."
are.
He's like, are you a gamer? I'm like, yeah, on PS5. He's like, anyway, so the session is always for me gonna be like duplicate new track, duplicate new track. I'd like to go through packs and hear what other people have made, and then I'm switching out wavetables. I'm choosing random shit. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I'm like Nest Acoustics with how good my sound design is from
It's
scratch.
so good. It's
It's
crazy.
insane. And like, I'm looking at people like yourself, Max. I'm looking at others like, Morgan from Cracked Records, other
Yeah.
people that are doing great tutorials and videos, and I'm applying little tidbits to Serum or to that's really specific to Serum, but yeah, it's duplicate, keep going, switch out the oscillator. Okay, saw wave, sawtooth on this one, man. Sine square, no, square saw. Let's see what that sounds like. And it's just basic shit.
Yeah.
Uh, and different distortion, different just going through and amplifying and then printing to audio. And then that's the kind of like new phase of a lot of what I'm doing to find harder kind of dubbier shit is printing to audio, and then just going through an entire you know bounce a whole note, and make a really weird envelope, and with a long attack or like a weird release, and take a little bit of that and then resample that again. But the other half of what I like doing is using stuff like Native Instruments reactor plugins to kind of get an analog feel for
My
it
reactor's
too.
type. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the Dr. Fresh project has been like Razor is my favorite synth still because it's got this. I love Gesaffelstein and Boys Noise and all that kind of like analog fueled electro techno shit. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, that
Okay.
was not a quick fire answer.
No,
That
no,
was like
it's
2
okay.
minutes.
It's okay.
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
When you sit down in front of a blank project, what is typically your first move? I feel like once I have a bit to go off of, I have a lot of fun, but sometimes I have a hard time getting started.
Totally. So for me, usually either a vocal or a bass sound that's getting the project going, and then I'll import my drums from a previous project that worked for me that is similar to the vision that I have, and I'll use those drums and eventually change out the drum sounds. Maybe leaving the kick in though, kind of foundational to the groove, unless it sticks out later on. That's the short answer.
No, that's a good answer for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any rituals or routines that help you stay creative?
Um, yeah, I feel like for the having like calling something a sound design project, and for me that's something I'll do on airplanes. When I know that I'm not getting shit done, but and I just don't have a show I'm hooked on, and I'd say 50% of the plane rides where I'm awake, I need to be working, doing something. So like, call it a sound design project, put it in the header, in the title of your Ableton session, and just do that, man. Don't overthink it. You're not writing your Mozart fucking, you know, Magnus opus or whatever, magnum opus. You're just fucking make some sounds, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Just do it and have fun.
Call
Right?
it what it is. That's what I'm trying to say.
Call it what it is.
Have fun. Call it what it is.
Um, do you have advice for your younger self?
Yeah, man. I like the Kenny Beats "Don't overthink shit" phrase a lot. I look back to when I was growing a lot as a producer, and I wasted a lot of time making like 40 variations of one wobble. And so those sound design sessions are really fun, but there shouldn't be 40 tracks in your main session when you're producing and you've got an idea that's going. So that's honestly, got to see Skrillex do that in person at one point too, where he's just like, keep going, it's good enough. And I was like, oh shit. And that hit around the like Lemon Tree Studio era, like 2016, 2015. But I didn't take that to heart. I didn't right away. I was like, still like, I need to be bigger and better. The short answer to what you just asked is like, you're going to be happy with the final product, dude. Believe in the final product. It'll sound like shit. And sometimes, all you need is one little thing that'll come later on in the process. So just like keep going.
And how often does that one little thing come at just way deep in the process? Like you don't get to jump from zero to tight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ever. Like it's not how it works, right? So you have to have faith in what you're doing.
Likes weed.
PD is right about everything, so I can't support that. But yes, PD, the absolute legend.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't go from 0 to a million in one step. So have fun along the way. Don't trip, and the magic will happen. I still preach to people to gather as much inspiration existing in life as possible. Like for me, inspiration doesn't come when I sit down on the computer to work.
Right. No.
Inspiration comes to me when I'm watching anime or I'm blacked out in the car not because I'm drunk, because I'm just spacing into nothingness. Yeah. And the idea comes, right? When you train your brain to just subconsciously be grinding, right? You're in the shower, you're at the gym, you're sleeping, right? My most popular tune that I've ever written, I dreamed the melody. I woke up and in the middle of the night, sprinted to my computer, wrote the melody down, ended up being the biggest song of my life. You can train your subconscious to grind for you, right? Like it's not like sit in the chair, magic time. It's just to exist and be a sponge and soak up the beauty of the things that you're enjoying and experiencing. And that's what music is. That's what art, right? That's how you make art. Life imitates art.
Yes.
So go and imitate art.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
So
the dream that's epic. I've thought of
the dream is crazy. It's happened to me twice. The second time it happened, it wasn't the same, but it's not the point. I like to tell the one about the one time it worked. Yeah. One question I have for you that's kind of regarding the label that I think that is a conversation I have all the time with new artists, which is, okay, we're cooking. We have our first EP. Maybe it's a second EP. I didn't get to land on the label that I wanted. Would you, number one, are you recommending pursuing labels as a new artist? Number two, if not, like, how do you, I'm not going to ask that, how do you approach record label thing? Because it's pretty obvious, but it's more about how high on the priority list is record label over self-release in the beginning? And then from there, what sort of things is a label like House Call that you have in all of your label experience looking for in a new artist?
I think you have to, when you get into the business realm and you're writing emails as your artist project and you're like talking to labels, you're obviously doing business for the art that you have, so you can build a revenue stream out of it. So think of it like a networking event at that point.
Mm.
You know, and you gotta like be willing to like go out there, put yourself out there, send dem like I sent 3 demos to Nightbase and never got one signed. AC didn't like them. He said, "I'll sign this one if you take away this trap drop and make it only house, and I'll put it on a compilation." I said, "You know what? No thanks, because I'm gonna do it on another EP, just respectfully, if that's cool." But like I was gutted. I didn't get signed to Nightbase, and this is before I started the prescription. But um, I ended up becoming, acquaintances with AC Slater at that time. He's a homie, and I feel like that guy and I would be, even good friends if we lived nearby.
Yeah.
But fucking great example of a dude that I've had the pleasure of seeing every couple months for the last 10 years. Um, Listened to in high school. Yeah, don't
Right.
get so hung up on having to be a part of like one specific uh, you know label or group or faction, because going back to your first question, individuality is so fucking important that ultimately you're going to end up getting brought into that world because of the individual person that you are, the spice that someone needs you at the potluck, bro. And like they don't need another person making brownies, dude. They
Yeah.
need somebody making blondies, man.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
you making a better, don't make the same potato salad, make some cracked ass shit.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't bring lasagna. Bring, if you're, and that's going back to my sauce analogy of being the chef. Maybe you're not that great of a producer, but you're extremely individual at it. Like, um, you know, don't get hung up on having to go put your music out on labels anymore with the internet 3.0 that we're in here now with social media. Drop bootlegs for
Drop
sure.
them. Drop them,
Don't
and the labels come running when you're ready.
Yes, and artist development, we developed Caller ID into this platform where we could take artists who were growing, and basically say, hey, I want to put you on a compilation with like 7 other people in a room. You guys are all figuring your shit out right now, and hopefully this will become a pipeline for you to develop your career. And sometimes it's exactly what you need to do, and you need to say, okay, hey, I'm not, Mau P rebranding and just going to come out of the gate with the biggest dance hit ever, having nothing else on my artist project. And I need to put out 30 records before I get any recognition. Sometimes you got to do that, and you just got to
Yeah.
believe in it. And other times,
I think it's actually what normally happens.
what the Mau
Like,
P? Yeah,
no, no,
everyone.
no. No, I'm saying the opposite. The opposite of
Yeah,
Mal
that's
P.
what. Yeah,
The
with
Mal
me,
P
yeah,
concept is like,
that's wild.
I
You
don't want to
can't
say
use that
nepotism,
as
but like, like it's just not going to happen. Don't bank on it. Just
right.
grind.
Yes, and that's where the industry business. If you sit down with a big manager, you sit down with like the Mo Shalizis in the room, they're gonna be like, uh, Marshmallow's manager. I just pulled out that name,
The
but
Sunnies, yeah.
yeah, you sit down with anyone that's managing an act that's pulling millions of dollars a year, that they're gonna tell you that like, dude, and I had a promoter tell me, a promoter literally came up to me when I was doing an event with them, and it was like a multi-stage event in the Midwest. And they're like, "Hey, man, like we haven't worked together since 2015, and this is like 2022 or three." And he's like, "Weren't you like not doing shit for a while?" And that was crazy to me because I was like, "Nah, man, it's just
Uh,
been one foot in front of the other, selling a little bit more tickets than I did last month. Maybe I sell the same amount of tickets that I did in this market as I did 3 years ago." And he's like, "Oh, that's funny." And then he looked at me, he's like, "Congrats." And then he paused and he goes, "Sometimes it's just a lot easier to market a new act. And so here's my advice. That is how people at that level think. So you can't lie and say that like the agents and the promoters and the managers don't think like that, but you got to outsmart the system.
mm,
And by doing that, you can still like, so don't release your first EP then in like the major way and say this is the biggest statement ever if it isn't a key part of your narrative. If it is, then you gotta save your save some juice is what I'm trying to say. Knock 2 dropped so many fucking bootlegs before he popped off. He had like 6 years of that shit, and he had
Yeah.
a few record label releases too, and then with Dash Star, then he was able to rebrand the kind of like EP strategy and be like, this is my first EP, this is my first album, and all my first there. But he dropped like 50 records already.
Yeah, been around, and he's also been tight. Like
Yeah.
Knock 2 has always been good, So like,
yes,
for sure.
But like, think about like how you spill your juice. So going to labels, like, it's a very fickle process, but like, the without getting too long winded in it, like, get yourself out there. Start putting shit on Instagram and on SoundCloud. You could drop shit on Bandcamp. If you feel like, I'm dropping stuff on DSPs and it's not even getting 1,000 streams and per release, it's just my homies and a few other people. But I'm really having, better traction just on, this homie's Discord and on SoundCloud, then go back to that for a little bit. Try to get signed to a label. And if you see that really remarkably moving things forward, then maybe that's a good partner that you should try to work with again. There were times when, we throw hundreds or thousands of dollars at a release and it wouldn't go well. And other times when we're like, okay, this is all the money that we have to market this whole compilation. And there's a bare minimum that I want to spend on everything. I'll say that.
Sure.
But this fucking record just fucking went, and you're like, Jesus Christ, okay. And so like labels have to be reactive and proactive is what I'm trying to say. So like understand that like, sometimes shit just doesn't work. So try it all the fuck out.
Yeah.
But like always keep your sauce in your pocket until you're paying your bills all the way through with this shit. I feel like I have my guard down, and I'll show you the Shoreline remix that I made in a second on Ableton. I have nothing to hide. Tape B said it to me when we were collabing too. He's like, I got nothing to hide, man. It's like the ship's already sailing, So it's a long-winded, hard answer, but outsmart those managers that are judging you, and outsmart those promoters that are like, oh, he's already made his market debut. Like, figure out a way for you to frame your project in that it's still in its infant stage, even though you've been doing it for 6 years. That's the key that I've learned over time. Those agents aren't listening to the music as much as we all are, guys.
True.
Hey, everybody, how many are in the chat? 31 right now. There's 35 people here that know this better than the person who's booking fucking XYZ festival. That's
right.
What I'm saying.
Absolutely.
It. Yeah.
That was such a W take, dude. Yes. That was
Thanks,
such
man.
a great take.
Thanks, bro.
Amazing. Just dripping sauce here. Yeah. Share away.
And I got the share sound, right? We're doing stereo.
We're doing the stereos. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. High fidelity. All right, guys. We've left this till the very end. I'm glad we could talk for so long. You don't save her. Yeah. I wish to all your questions in the chat. I wish I could drop some more knowledge now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that should be a good level. But here to announce that my Shoreline Mafia remix is going to be official, and I'm going to be dropping it on a new imprint that I'm starting. Boom.
Yeah.
Yes, and this is in its infant stages. This is the same version of the song, beefed up a little bit on the mix side, but also
Fresh talk to him.
the vocal stems from 300 Entertainment and Shoreline and Diego. So here we go.
World premiere.
Why that stupid bitch need me? Come to the back for acting tough, you need a DP. I slap a nigga off the rip on GP. Never met a bitch that was ever gonna leave me. Downtown LA, down the district getting freezy. When it get janky, then a nigga drop skis. No face, no case, how the fuck that was Jeezy? I'ma beat the case down easy, believe me. If you talk about a trophy, then I've been one. Bitch, I been posting on the block with a big gun. Drug dealer, loan shark, I want some of my lens. I don't pay for pushing, but I want some, I'ma spend some. Bitch, I been rich since I lived in low income. Catch a eye, spin one, hit a corner, bend one. Real straight nigga in the hundreds till the Benz comes. Really real pivot going on, I can sense something. Bitch, you know we back. Yeah, we back in business. Back with the switches, back with the bitches. Chain look ridiculous, God is my witness. Playing with the mafia, sleep with the fishes. Bitch, you know we back. Yeah, we back in business. Back with the switches, back with the bitches. Chain look ridiculous, God is my witness. Playing with the mafia, sleep with the fishes. Nigga. out bitches, finna suck dicks, nookie on a nigga.
The main sauce here was me fucking around with Urban Dove's new Serum 2 plugins. Just going crazy on some of the automation. So I loaded in the original synth track here.
Yo, Tony, can you pause it?
Yeah, man. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Great.
Cool. Yeah. So we don't need to play the whole song, but a couple last few things in that sound design love and to tie in a few things together. Yeah, man. Those sound design sessions created the song, you know. Just automating, start playing around with your LFO rates, start playing around with like the noise oscillator here, the noise pitch, and you're gonna find some cool different sounds that you can isolate and resample into your bass line. So the original.
Oh.
See those curves there? That little lick that you hear at the second half of my drop basically ends up becoming, that's where we got the bass line. That's where it all started. So I'll say, I then bounced that out, simplified it, and then we get just the sustained saw wave that we have over the drop, and the rest of the project I'll go over in later depth perhaps, but it's just a lot of G-Funk elements. Serum, Omnisphere, Serum's new analog retro basses are awesome if you're making G-Funk. Just in the stock pack, it's great. There's not too much craziness. I stopped mastering my shit, and I'm just kind of all stem mastering everything.
Yeah.
And I'm clipping the shit out of my projects. I think we're at like plus 11 on this.
Good.
And it sounds a little wonky, but I'm taking a little wonky. I was just sending my stuff out for stem mastering and mixing, and it feels good to just do my own shit, for the first time in years. So last few releases, just Tape B and Calcium. Thank you guys for giving me the confidence to just start making loud bass music.
Yeah. I love it, man. It's awesome.
Yeah.
You have an amazing sense of arrangement and very good drum programming and also drum selection. I'm a big drum selection stickler because it's a bit borderline impossible to teach, but it's like you just either listened to this growing up or it's just like in the back of your brain. All of your music feels very natural. And I think that that's such a huge part of it and that also leads to, I guess replicate isn't the word because that would imply that you're just doing the same thing over and over, but recreatability, like your sustainability, right? You're able to continue to make music because what you're doing is what you love, right? You're not capping about nothing. And that is how you are able to have a sustainable, lengthy career like Tony Fresch has had and will continue to have.
Max.
And may the blessings upon you continue.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad we could spill a little bit of the sauce. Thanks for the kind words. Ultimately, at the end of the day, like, is it banging? Would you groove to it? Keep going, man. Make something you groove to.
Yeah. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much, Tony. That's going to be it.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, chat. Wonderful hour.
Thank you to the chat. You guys are awesome. You guys have been raging. What a fun evening. You guys are the coolest. Anyone in here interested in taking the next step in the music production journey, hit me up. You can start your free trial at Futureproof Music School. We're doing some really awesome, super unique, really cool stuff. And I'm really proud of it.
It's worth it. Futureproof, baby.
Yep. We have the blessing from Tony. Much love, everybody. Y'all have a fantastic rest of your evening and also the safest and most beautiful weekend you've ever had in your life. This is what I desire for everyone.
Wonderful.
And we shall will it into existence. I'm moving out to the Bay.
Congrats. That's a great announcement.
Not quite the Bay, but like Santa Rosa, like the North Bay.
I love Santa Rosa, man. I told you I spent my childhood years in Marin, and that is Santa Rosa is incredible, dude. You're to your west, you've got the best coastline. To your east, you got the Calistoga and the Russian River Valley.
Surrounded by wine. Yeah, I'm excited to
surrounded by wine.
Surrounded by vineyards, and we're excited. My dad lives in Petaluma, So
Nice.
like,
Oh my God. Yeah.
just around that area, you know, dipping out of Nashville, taking the next step in life. And I'm really excited.
Congratulations.
If you ever head back out there, I want to see you. And
Man,
I want to come to Vancouver because God, I love Vancouver. It's so awesome.
you drop me a line, Max. Here,
I will
got
rip
you when
it
you
to
come
Van
up
City
here.
from the Bay. That's an easy trip.
It's super. It's the easiest. Next
The easiest.
to Seattle,
We could
man.
take the ferry to Victoria. We could go on a double date.
Now we
When
are
are you getting
talking.
married?
Next fall we'll be getting
Next
married.
fall.
So, yeah.
So a year and a bit.
Engaged almost 2 years before we wanted to do the big wedding. So we're figuring that out right now.
Enjoy
Thank you.
enjoy being engaged. The one cool thing is that the only thing that's better than being engaged is being married.
Let's go. Yes.
Being married is the fucking best. It is the
Well,
best. You just get to
yes.
fucking spend all the time of your life with your best friend. And
Yeah,
it's
right.
just the best.
Yeah,
Shout out to
man.
my wife, Charmaine, the best human
Let's
I've ever
go.
met in my life. In the chat, she's already a VIP.
Shout
Not
out, Mrs.
surprised.
Hype.
Yeah. Yeah, she's amazing.
Much
She's
love,
the best.
Charmaine.
Anyways, with all of that, I want to say thank you one more time. Thank you to the chat. And this happens every month. I think next month we might have Ella Stream. I don't know. We'll see.
Hell yeah.
But I appreciate all of your gems. That was so valuable. And I learned a lot. And I want to go rip some fucking West Coast beats immediately. I've been inspired.
Now that I know you're moving to the West, and there's definitely I know several people in the chat are in California. NorCal is, the West Coast is where it's at, whether you're in Vancouver all the way down to Baja, baby. Pacific is where it's at.
I agree, man. Honestly, I miss seafood. It's
right?
like, until you don't have it, like landlocked, like Nashville, I'm close-ish to the East Coast, but like just not being able to walk down the street and like look at the fish you're about to eat is heartbreaking. It's like, I don't know.
The quality of salmon that I can get for under $10.
I don't want to hear about it. I'm green with envy. Okay, we're out of here. Much love, everybody.
Much love, everybody. Have a great week. Much love, Futureproof. Take care,
one.
Max.
Peace, guys. Later.